So I believe this is the fourth video, part 4, and we're on number 30. And what are they asking us to do? They're asking us to simplify, okay? And then also identify any t-values for which the expression is undefined. So we're first going to simplify by factoring and canceling. If I take a look at the top, what could I pull out of there? T to the second, correct? And also a 2. So I'm going to pull out 2t to the second, and what would be left over on the inside? T minus 2. So you have a binomial t minus 2. And that's what's on top. Now let's go for the bottom. On the bottom, what could I pull out of here? What's in common? A t. So we're pulling out a t. And if you pull out one of those t's, what's going to be left? T minus 2 again. Now that's a beautiful thing because the binomial on top cancels out with the binomial on the bottom. And you really have this left over. However, you could still cancel out more things, right? You could cancel out a t, to be more specific. You have a t squared up here on top. That's really a t times t. And down here you have one single t. So one of these t's cancel out with one of these, and you're going to have one left over up on top. So what's your final simplified form of this expression? 2t. That's your answer, 2t. Now, that really doesn't help us at all. Well, it does a little, because the first part is your answer, and as you can see right here, the answer is 2t. Right here, it's something else, so it definitely cannot be b. But this one's 2t, and this one's 2t. But the second part says, for which identify any t-values for which the expression is undefined. So we need to go back to the original factored form. Let me repeat that. You go back to the original factored form, which is this right here. The 2t squared, the binomial t minus 2, and the t times t minus 2. So what would make the denominator 0? The denominator, how could it become 0? If t is equal to what? In other words, what would mess it up? A 2 would mess it up, correct? Or a 0 would also mess it up. So right here, this t right here, if it were equal to 0, the whole thing would be 0. Or if this t is equal to 2, it would also, the whole thing would end up being 0. And that would make them both undefined. So what are the values for which the expression is undefined? T cannot be 2 or 0. So C is the correct answer. Does that make sense? Because if t were 0, that would make the whole thing undefined. Or if t were 2, that would also make it 0 and make the whole thing undefined. So that's your answer on number 30. Now number 29 on this practice test is exactly like this one. So you could go back and try that one and see if you could get the correct answer. The correct answers are on the wall back here, or they're also on Edmodo on a post. Bless you. So let's move on to number 31. It says solve the equation. Solving's easy. All you got to do is get x by itself on one side. So where's the x at? It's right here on the left side of the equal sign. It's right here on the left. But then again, it's also on the right. So you have x's on both sides. You don't want x's on both sides. So let's first off get this x out of a denominator. We don't want it down there on the denominator of a fraction. So how could I get rid of that denominator of x? Multiply everything by x. Now let me zoom in a bit here. Let me multiply everything by x. I'm talking about this x times x, that's 7 times x, and this fraction times x. And what happens is the x's cancel. The equal sign's right here. I really have a negative 10, no more fraction. And on the left side, I have an x squared plus 7x. So I have x squared plus 7x equals negative 10. It's a quadratic. I might as well set it equal to 0 by adding 10 to both sides. So you're going to add 10 to both sides. You're going to have a new quadratic trinomial equation. And that new quadratic trinomial equation will be x squared plus 7x plus 10, and it does equal 0. Now at this point, you could use a quadratic formula, or you could, what I prefer to do always, is to attempt to factor, split, and solve. So you're going to attempt to factor, and what times what is positive 10 that if you add together is positive 7. 5, positive 5, and positive 2. That's correct. Now, if you were making this video to turn it in, you would want to explain that we factored it, and then you would also want to explain the zero product property. The zero product property says this times this equals 0. That means that this first something could be 0, or this second something could be 0, right? So this first something, x plus 5, that could be 0, or the x plus 2 could also be 0. And if you solve both of those, you're going to get two answers, x equals -5, and also x equals -2. So those are your two answers. And you got to take a quick second and make sure that if you plug in a 2 or a -5 into the x's, that you don't end up with something undefined, because if it were the case, then you would say that that would be excluded. But both of these, -5 and -2, work. So the correct answer to this one is D. X equals -2, x equals -5. You got it? Yes, I got it. Okay, let's move on. So 32 is exactly the same. You could try that on your own and you could check your answer, see if you got it. Number 33, that one looks fun. It says add those two fractions, identify any x values for which the expression is undefined. So to add two fractions, you want to find the common denominator, and the best way to do that is to factor the denominators before even trying to find the LCD. So if you think about that first quadratic, it's going to be a x minus 5 and an x plus 4. Now, since we do have an x minus 5 over here, this will be the common denominator on both of them. Okay, so I'm going to need some space. Let me go over here. So let me do my two fractions, one fraction here, one fraction there, and it's going to be the x minus 5x plus 4 on both. So there are my two fractions. They have the common denominator that we just mentioned. There's the plus sign that was originally there right between both of them. So now we need to ask ourselves, how am I going to change this first fraction to become this common denominator? What do I need to do to that x minus 5? I need to multiply it by what? X plus 4. Okay, so you're going to multiply by x plus 4. You're going to multiply the top by x plus 4 also, which means that you're going to have to distribute up there. X times x is x squared. Let me just write it up here somewhere on the side. X times 9 is 9x. 4 times x is 4x. And 4 times 9 is 36. So on the first fraction's numerator, I will have x squared plus 13x plus 36. On the second fraction, this already has the LCD, so I don't mess with the second fraction. I'm just going to bring that down and put it on the numerator on the second fraction. So that's going to be a negative 10x minus 76. Okay, now that I have an LCD, I could rewrite a single LCD right here and then combine all the terms alike and put them all on top of that single fraction. So there's my LCD. Now it's a question of combining like terms. Because this is positive, I could just work straight from here. If it were a minus, I'd have to distribute and change both signs. But distributing a plus sign is not going to change anything. So I could just start combining right there on the numerators. And if I start with the highest x squared, there's nothing to combine that with, so just bring it down, x squared. We could combine the 13x that we see here with that negative 10x, and what do we get? Positive 3x, so I put plus 3x. And last but not least, we could combine the 36 with the negative 76. Now what does that give us? Negative 40. So we have this as our answer so far. Is there anything else that we could do? The question is, could we continue factoring the numerator and maybe cancel something out? So that above quadratic trinomial could factor to x minus 5 and x plus 8. And where do we get that from? You're thinking, what times what is negative 40? That if you add together is positive 3. And of course, that is over the x minus 5 times x plus 4, the LCD. And what cancels? The x minus 5 cancels with the x minus 5. So your final answer is x plus 8 over x plus 4. Now, in this case, with the answer, you already know that it has to be A. But there might be a couple of them on the test where you already have both of these correct answers and you have to go to the values that make it undefined. So obviously x equals -4 will make it undefined because -4 plus 4 would give you the 0 in the denominator, and that would make it undefined. Another value that would make it undefined is +5, right? +5. So we know that the correct answer is A. However, I believe there's a typo because it's undefined at x equals 4, and it should also be undefined at x equals 5. So I believe that's a typo. It should also have an x equals 5 right there on the undefined values. So -4 and 5 are the undefined values. Could somebody check? So we did check on the answers provided here, and the answer is A. However, I do believe there is a typo that they forgot to say that an excluded value is 5 also. Because if you plug in a 5, even to the original, 5 take away 5 is 0. And that would be undefined. Anyways, that was a long one. Number 33 is exactly like 34. So if you want to practice, go ahead and try number 34. Check your answer, and that way you'll see if you're ready for that question on the test. We're going to just jump to 35, which is pretty much the same thing as the one we just did. As a matter of fact, we're not, because it is going to take some time, so we're just going to end this video right here and start up another one later.